what's going on, y'all? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And you're about to watch a little OTB LSU.
We're going to give you all the latest, greatest between LSU football, baseball, women's basketball, softball, and everything in between.
Bottom line, if you want to talk Tigers, keep it locked, subscribe, like it, and we hope you enjoy.
What do y'all think, Chat, Taylor, and Casey, are the biggest questions facing LSU football coming into the year? We know we're going to talk a lot about Jaden Daniels and Garrett Nussmeier going into the year, but I think you have to start with what we already discussed, and that's the special teams. Will they be improved? My answer is yes, because they have to be. I think Ramos is somewhat of an enigma. He had some really good moments. He had some really clutch kicks. I don't know if he can really be a kicker where LSU feels really good, in these clutch situations. Is he almost automatic when the game is on the line? I don't know if they're there just yet. I don't know how much competition he's going to see at practice throughout training camp, but with the parts around him being better, you would think the kicking game is going to be effective, and you would think special teams are going to be improved for LSU this season. That's a big question coming into the year.
No, I definitely think they're going to be improved. And as far as Ramos goes, if you remember the back half of last year, Ramos was actually a pretty good kicker. His stats as a whole, I mean, like you said, he struggled a little bit at the beginning of the year, but his stats as a whole, he actually wound up having a decent year just because his back half of the year was so good. You know, if they could stop those blocks on the field goal, which kind of seems like they did at the last half of the year, I think they'll be fine. Mario, as far as defense goes, my biggest question marks is going to be that edge spot, and then, of course, corner. Safety, you're deep, but then when you look at the front seven, you got Harold Perkins and Omar Spates in the middle. Those guys are going to be studs. They're solid. Up front, you expect your three down linemen to be Savion Jones, Mason Smith, and Mekhi Wingo, with all those transfers coming in, whether it's a Paris Shand, a Jordan Jefferson, Jalen Lee coming over from Florida. I mean, that position's deep. It's that Jack linebacker spot, the role that B.J. Ojulari left, that hole to fill. That's kind of my biggest concern. Now, Ovie Ogofu coming in from Texas, in my opinion, is going to be the guy to take that spot. And he had some good numbers at Texas. Hasn't played in the SEC yet, though. That edge position, that Jack linebacker, if you will, that's my biggest question mark on the whole team going into the season.
That's fair. And somebody's definitely going to have to step up there. There's still some questions when it comes to this defense, but if all goes well and you have good health, you would think you're going to have star players almost at every level of the field. And I think, when it comes to the secondary, there are some questions. There are some new faces there. But the return of Greg Brooks might be a little bit underrated, in my opinion. That's somebody who came up with some huge plays last season. The strip against Auburn and the former LSU Tiger Coy Moore was a huge moment in the season last year. And I think he's going to be asked to do a lot this year, both on field and in the locker room as a leader. And you mentioned Harold Perkins there for a second. We know what he is as an edge rusher. We know he can get after the quarterback. He won LSU by himself, I would say, lots of big games last season. But this year, I'm curious to see the diversification of his game, man, because Matt House, not only a really good DC, but has done some really good work with linebackers over the years, both in the collegiate and the NFL level. And Harold Perkins last year was super raw. There were times where the coaches kind of had to play him because of his talent, but he didn't really have the wherewithal to be a complete linebacker. Now he has a year of experience under his belt. I think we'll continue to see the edge rushing be really effective, but I think him in coverage, him doing things that he just wasn't able to do last year because he didn't have the experience, we will see this year. And that's a job that Matt House has had over the offseason. I think we see somewhat of a different Harold Perkins this year, but in a good way. I'm excited to see year number 2 of what this kid can do.
No, I'm excited. Like you mentioned, he's moving into the middle. I love the move. I thought he played a little bit out of position last year, which is hard to say because of how good he is. But look, we were just talking about the edge spot. If you struggle there, you can always put Perkins there in blitz situations. The thing I like about him being in the middle, it's more responsibilities for him, sure, but he's got the speed and the ability to go sideline to sideline. We know he can do that. It's so much harder to scheme against a guy when he's right there smack dab in the middle of the defense. You put him on the edge, you can always try to run away from him, maybe roll your quarterback opposite of where Harold Perkins is. When you're in the middle and you could still send him on a blitz, I mean, think Devin White did this exact thing. People don't really talk about that. His freshman year, he was coming off the edge. I mean, he had 3 sacks against Lamar in that Citrus Bowl, which I didn't hate. And but you moved him into the middle linebacker role the next year. He was even better. He was able to make more plays. You mentioned him in coverage. Harold Perkins had that pick where he jumped up in the air against Auburn last year and snatched that thing down. Yeah, we've already seen his coverage ability. I think a guy like Perkins in the middle of your defense next to an Omar Spates who can kind of help him adjust to that role because he's been a 4-year starter in Power 5 football. I think the duo of those guys in the middle is going to be really, really good.
I love the DY comparison. And while Matt House is a beast, I don't mean to take anything away from him. I think Aranda maybe utilized Devin White as a freshman a little bit better than they did Harold Perkins last year, but it's very similar. You know, that they have skills that you can't really teach, like getting 9 technique and go get the quarterback, you know, like nose for the football are things that you cannot coach, right? But with experience, you can get even better. And I think down the road, when his 3 years at LSU are up, Harold Perkins can have a Devin White-like impact, maybe a little bit better than D. White was. So very excited to watch him and the rest of the LSU defensive line this year. And before we get to Carter, we have to mention Jaden Daniels and his importance coming into the season. It seems LSU, by just going by Brian Kelly's words, are comfortable whether he's in the game or whether Garrett Nussmeier is in the game. Nussmeier didn't have a good start to last season. The 2 interceptions against Southern, you're going to be judged by game reps, but then he had much better game reps as the season went on later in the year and in the SEC championship game against Florida. But the mission for Jaden Daniels going into this year has to be pretty simple, and that has to be improving throwing the football to the third level of the field. Like, he was efficient last year. He took care of the ball. You love the ratio, 17 touchdowns, 3 interceptions with 2,900 yards, but you want to see that go up just a notch. Like, I've heard Brian Kelly say he wants him in like the late 20s there and maybe like 3,500 yards passing. You can't discount what he does as a runner, but when you get into the nitty-gritty of things, he will have to be better attacking that third area of the field. But I think he can get there. Given what we saw as a freshman from Jaden Daniels, I think he can make that improvement. He has a good coaching staff. He has excellent receivers to throw the football to, and I think he can be improved there. If not, Garrett Nussmeier might take his spot, but you got to like what you saw from Daniels as a freshman, and you have to like the healthy competition going into this year.
Yeah, man, I love it. I told you yesterday morning I was trying not to wake my wife up, wanted to watch something on TV. I was like, I'm going to watch some LSU football games, just put it on mute. So rewatched a lot of games yesterday. Yeah, the thing I like about Daniels, you know, obviously that ability to run, but he made a lot of throws last year that were a little bit underrated in front of kind of a makeshift offensive line. I mean, you heard Brian Kelly at SEC Media Days. He said, last year I came here, I had no idea who any of my 5 starters are going to be on O-line. You return all 5 of your starters basically from last season. That O-line should be much improved. You just mentioned the receiving core. If Daniels can stand back there, learn to step up in the pocket a little bit more. Look, as someone who's played and coached this position, that's the most important thing you can do. It opens up so many more throwing windows. Because think about it, Mario. If you roll out to your right and you try to throw, you've basically cut the field in half. You have the hash mark to the sidelines. When you step up, you got sideline to sideline. You're there. You're ready to go. It still gives you the ability to take off and run. If he can improve on that, again, the O-line getting better, the receivers are there. If he can get them the ball, they're going to make plays. But, yeah, I think there's a lot to be excited about with Jaden Daniels heading into 2023.
Wow, Jake, what incredible takes.
I mean, those guys, they're just the best.
I think so. And if you think so, again, hit the like button, subscribe, ring the bell so you get notifications when we post every single day here on OTB LSU.